I am so fired up about this conversation with Anna Sabramowicz. She's a master interactive storyteller, instructional design expert, and the co-creator of the groundbreaking interactive story, The Broken Coworker. Anna has worked with numerous well-known clients, including Adidas, Sony, Rubbermaid, Save the Children, and the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative. She's won numerous awards for her e-learning work and recently launched a coaching program to help instructional designers create immersive learning experiences using Articulate Storyline 360. Today, Anna's going to tell us about some of the hot new trends in scenario-based learning and interactive storytelling and how these trends are impacting businesses and organizations.
Hey, Anna, it's so great to have you on today. Thanks for joining us. I consider you a pioneer in interactive storytelling, but I know you used to be a traditional e-learning developer. So can you tell us about your aha moment when you decided to transition from traditional e-learning to interactive storytelling?
That's a great question. And I am so excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It came out of frustration, actually, because one of the things that I was doing is I was getting a whole bunch of projects that, and it's funny because this was still like a decade ago. And I think a lot of people are still in this situation where you get a project and they're like, can you turn this presentation? Can you turn this speaker notes into, something interesting and entertaining online for people to consume passively? And that was very difficult because, as we all know, translating those mediums and things like that, it's just like you have to rethink these things before it's not a straight up conversion. But I didn't get that for a long time. So I actually did say, hey, I can make this content beautiful and pretty and make it engaging for an online experience. And what happened is, as a result of that, I felt like I, for a while, struggled with, am I in the right profession? Because this seems like this is harder than it should be. And I'm not loving it as much as I thought I would love it, right? It sucked, really. So because of that, I kept on, and I worked with my partner, Ryan. And one of the things is he was in web development and I was like trying to do things on my own after, all these stints with all these mentors and things like that. But what happened is because I was struggling and because he was helping me, we were both struggling with this. Like, how can we make this, how can there be engaging experiences online that are kind of leveraging that medium to the max? And of course, we're looking at all these examples, right? And trying to see which ones really resonate with us. And so we saw Connect with Haji Kamal, as many people did.
Right.
And that project, there was like a piece in there there was lots of pieces in there that we had seen before, but there was one piece that was different, and it was the storytelling piece. And I didn't catch it because I was like looking at it from this instructional design view and my paradigm. But Ryan, who's like a huge comic book fan, he's like, there's story in there. And I was like, oh, duh. So then we're like, hey, this is cool. Is that why it works? Is that why, because there's like a protagonist and all those things. And then we kind of ran from there and then just kept on evolving, building on that, and built our own thing, Broken Coworker. But really that was the aha, was that moment going, this is cool, and why? So going back and deconstructing those pieces was helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to include links to some of these things, like you mentioned Broken Coworker. I'm going to include a link in the show notes, I think, for this. I'm already going to deviate from my questions. So, I've featured stuff about Broken Coworker on my channel before because, I've told people this is a cool thing. But can you tell us a little behind the scenes, like about Broken Coworker, either what it was like developing it or what the reception was like or something? Because people don't all know the story of that experience.
Okay. So we acted in it, me and my husband, which is obviously kind of weird, but desperate times call for desperate measures. But also the other thing is, when you're developing your own piece, like, and you know this because you've done this, when you're developing your own piece, you feel like you've got super autonomy, right? So you're like, we can say whatever we want. We can be as provocative as we want, as inciting as we want. And nobody's going, oh, legal department, right? So that's exactly what we did. And the stories that we crafted, like a lot of people are like, oh, they're using it for harassment training. But I'm like, these are experiences that both Brian and I have had, and we just mushed them into this, this wacky harassment training that we call. It's really emotional intelligence training. It's really about, confidence training hidden in this story. But okay, so the cool part was how quickly we could move. I think people underestimate how quickly we could move. But then there's all the drawbacks to, I mean, you've worked now with Vyond and you see how flexible it is. And like, you can create something in like a weekend, right? If you want to. With video, there's so many constraints. Of course, I was lucky. I got to wear that blonde wig, which I still have, by the way. Never letting that thing go. But Ryan had grown his hair out. And so there was this, obviously, because we needed to reshoot some scenes, he had this really terrible Christmas because everybody's like, what's up with your hair? And you're like, it's for a project. So that was awkward. Anyways, so you just, it's obviously a learning experience, but one of the things you realize is that video is, you have to know how to work with it. And it taught us a lot of lessons that way. Like that was really cool. But the whole project was really about constraints because we put it together in a month. So, part of it was how can we prepare best so that all of that shooting, you're preparing your scripts and all your cuts and everything so that all of your shooting can happen in a very small amount of time, because that's the labor intensive part. But if you do all your prep work ahead of time, man, does it go fast. So that was the cool part. And of course, Articulate is Storyline is amazing at hosting video as well. So there was, even a decade ago, people are like, oh, what do you use? I'm like, it's still Storyline.
So when did you film that? When was that?
2011.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I didn't even realize it was that long ago. So
it was for that beta. So it really, like, people see the experience now. And if you think about it, that experience on the front end, what the user sees, has not changed at all. Ryan's been doing updates on the back end as the software evolves and becomes more like, it catches up. But really, that experience was out of the box like that in the beta version. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was beta. You mean beta of Articulate Storyline?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so those were the days, right? Wow. Okay, so let's talk about this now, because my specialty is actually interactive video, which I think of as a type of interactive story. But what does interactive story mean to you? And how does it relate to interactive video?
Okay. So for me, like, if you're doing an interactive story, basically, we heard this before, choose your own adventure, right? But now it's choose your own adventure where you get to, it's a little, okay, it's just probably just as tactile as a book. But one of the things that happens is we can really add a lot of fabulous elements that you can't in a book. So you can add mechanics, meters, all this context, all this drama that can be added as in almost like these game elements can be added to that experience, while still allowing somebody to make decisions that get them through to an ending that hopefully helps them transform. So I think the difference between, let's say, maybe a story, interactive story that's just illustrated versus one that's video. To be honest with you, I think video is really immersive, and video can add, like, there's so much that you can do, like, this master with Vyond. The things that you can do with video, it's just, it's like, there's so much that you can say, even with the settings and things like that. So one of the things you're doing, like when you're working with an illustrator or you're working with still images, there's almost a judiciousness that you have to come in with, because one, it'll cost you more money, or you only have so many images to show. So with video, you can do so much more. You can show so much of a situation and things like that you just can't do with still. That doesn't mean, I like one versus the other. It really depends on your context and what you can, what really speaks to, like, your audience, right? But I think that's where kind of video wins, and especially, if you look at YouTube, video wins. So
although because Storyline has those characters built in, the stock characters, you can really create some pretty powerful stories with the characters that you get. So I think that there's because budget constraints are always an issue. Right? Yes. In the learning and development space, you always got a budget. It's always less than you want. And sometimes video is not an option, and particularly live video. I think that's the real challenge. You guys actually did a really, that's why I felt like Broken Coworker was so groundbreaking is you combined live video action with still images. So it's this comic book form, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's a comic book format where the characters kind of come to life and suddenly you see them acting. And then it goes back to still images. And nowadays, of course, we have other types of vehicles like Beyond and stuff like that. But there's a lot of different mediums to choose from, which I think is one of the reasons why it's like now we have, it's so different than it was in 2011, right?
Yeah. And I kind of wish that people experimented more with like ghetto out of the box, like iPhone stuff. You know, when you saw that one, take the knife or right. The knife. That felt like a first person, like, you know, phone.
Yeah. Shaky camera.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that was so amazing. And I mean, Instagram and all those things, like it's all shaky cam, look at me type TikTok. So I'm like, why don't we embrace that? I think we're kind of attached to either, over the top or just like working within constraints is one of my favorite things. Right. And I think that people get hung up on characters, like, you know, out of the box, everybody's like, oh, it's out of the box stuff. I don't want to use, Atsumi or whatever. And I'm like, you can do so much with that lady. But the other thing that I think people miss out on is a great interactive story. Like 90% of the experience is also the writing. Like if your writing sucks and your dialogue sucks or the story sucks, there's only so much you can do with the visuals. So that has to be awesome because then the visuals complement like a fabulously written experience. And I think, to be honest, when I look at most people who come in who actually do scenario writing and all those things, that's the biggest. I think that's most people, if they just focused on becoming better writers at dialogue, at writing more succinctly, that would probably take their work to the next level alone, just becoming better at writing. And a lot of people just miss that. So that's just my...
Hey, just a quick interruption. If you're enjoying this video, would you hit the like button to let me know? And be sure to subscribe to learn more about interactive video creation. Okay, let's get back to the conversation.
I think you're right, because the other thing is that writing for interactive stories and interactive videos, it's more like script writing for a movie than it is academic writing or technical writing or traditional e-learning writing. I mean, it's that's the hugest difference between the two. And I think that's it's a craft that like is kind of like you might not learn that in school, even if you went through an e-learning, course.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
You wouldn't necessarily learn it. It's almost like you need to have gone to film school or something to learn those sorts of things. So it's a different skill set altogether. So, okay, so let's turn the corner and talk about how interactive stories and interactive videos can be useful to businesses and organizations. Like, what types of problems can they solve for real business situations? Awesome
question. I love this one. So I think that a lot of organizations assume, and I don't know if it's not organizations, it's individuals. Like we in the learning and development community, I think that who it draws is people who are like sponges and learners, right? And they're like, I love to learn. I'm a lifelong learner. And when you think about that, you're like, that's like 1% of the population. The rest of the population just wants to like finish work as soon as possible and get home and watch Netflix. That's it, right? Nobody's like, I can't wait to, like, you see those posts with like 10 stacks of books and like, this is what I'm reading. And I'm like, that's not real for most of the world. Like nobody does that. It's us. We're like, how many have you read? So one of the challenges is that we create a lot of this learning when you're like, I'm going to release it and people are going to be so excited to see it and learn from it. And that's not reality. Most people have to be not only sold on why something is valuable for them, but sold in a way that resonates with them. And so we have been trying to solve this. We've tried to engage people. Engagement is like the lowest, I think, that it's ever been at workplace. It's like 70% of people are disengaged, right? It's terrible. So now that we have that stat, for the longest time, what we've been trying to do is implement our WeFM formula, right? What's in it for me? And you list those things and you hope that the person resonates with those things and they're like, this is going to be valuable. I'm going to invest my time to get into this. And so that's a challenge. So one of the things that I'm a proponent of is that you understand that every single time you release something, people aren't going to care. You come into that conversation assuming they don't care about it, they don't want to see it, they have no interest, and they don't see any value in it. You're just dumping another task on them that they are not willing to take up because they're already so god darn busy. So one of the things you can do is to create basically a bridge between you're coming in with all your logical reasons why somebody should become a better salesperson and maybe take emotional intelligence training, going, this is going to be good for you because blah, 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 blah. But maybe their reason is, I actually want to have less stress at work and I don't want to deal with people in this way. But you haven't figured that out. Like, you don't know what that is for that individual. So one of the things you can do with an interactive story is bridge the gap from, I'm not interested in this, or I don't see the value in this, to get them in some ways actually, or an individual, excited about that journey because they've actually thought about what it would mean for them to actually become a better salesperson and take the time to actually invest their own time in that actual training that you already have. So what an interactive story does is it augments all the things you're already doing. It's kind of like a marketing campaign basically for the training that you're going to be doing. So a lot of organizations have tons of stuff, and I've worked with organizations like this. They're like, we have tons of stuff, but nobody's looking at it. So can we make it more sexy? And I'm like, listen, we could try and make it more sexy, but it's already pretty awesome. And there's people in here that are already using all this stuff. So maybe they haven't been sold on its value yet. So an interactive story, what it does is it can actually sell people on that value so that they go into that training ready to engage with it, and they see why it's going to be valuable for them personally. That's the huge thing. The what's in it for me is kind of a little too late almost, because that means that somebody's actually actively opened that e-learning module or that training going, I'm already ready. Most people never even get to that point. They're not interested. So if we can sell them on that, that's huge. And that to me is like half of the battle, is getting people excited about the training, selling them on it. Then another piece is, I think that what happens is we expect people to, especially if they're already in an organization that have been doing something for years and they're pretty good at what they do, or one of the things that happens when you like learn a skill, you don't look for reasons why you'd be wrong or the reasons where you're making mistakes, right? Like you're basically what happens, right? Like, when I type every day, I'm like, am I fast enough? Am I doing this the right way? Should I switch to a different keyboard? Like, most people don't do that. They're just like, everything's working and I'm doing the job in the perfect way. I'm awesome.
Yeah.
How do you tell that person, how do you instill in their mind that they could be better, that they're not that awesome? Well, an interactive story, what it does is, like, if I came up to you and I said, Kimberly, you're not so fast at typing, you'd probably be like, listen, who are you to tell me that? I'm awesome. I get everything done in the right time. But if I can get you into a story where you see somebody else struggling with that skill, then what happens is, at that point, my ego, my resistance to this advice, because you never take other people's advice, my resistance drops. And what happens is, because I'm going through a story through this and seeing this other character struggle, I might then be open-minded enough to see, hey, maybe I'm making some of these mistakes. I wonder how that would work for me. So it lowers the guard for you to be more persuasive, for you to instill some new ideas in people where otherwise they would not be open to those ideas. So, I mean, a lot of times I think, and this is kind of like, a hot topic right now with diversity and, all those things. And I'm thinking, if you come up to people and you say, hey, you guys aren't diverse enough, that's instantly going to raise some like, hey, I'm a good person, right? But imagine if we shared stories about somebody who thought they were diverse, but they made these mistakes along the way, so that somebody could question what that would be, check their bias, all those things. Like, there's a way to do that that's quite persuasive without you beating on them about their skills. So they're able to identify their gaps, and then they're way more open at the end when you go, hey, by the way, we've got some awesome training for you. What do you think? They might be like, hey, you know what? Through that story, I actually learned that, John was suffering with that. And I was like, maybe I need help with that too. So it lowers those natural barriers that everybody has, this resistance to new things and uncomfortable things, because we strive for comfort, we strive for certainty. And when you rock that, it has to be done the right way, because otherwise people will double down on being resistant. So it does that for all kinds of topics. So that's where I think those two are like huge. And
yeah.
I
think that's really interesting what you talked about, that kind of using this as almost a marketing tool for learning and development, like that the L&D department could use interactive videos or interactive stories as a marketing tool for their own material that's already housed in the LMS. Yeah. But just to get that consumption going, we borrow from the world of marketing, just like we borrow in many ways from the world of entertainment.
Yes.
Film, right? Because everybody's used to that. That's what we do for fun, is like watch Netflix and stuff. So when you see an interactive story and it mirrors that story arc and it has like some drama in it, you get sucked into it the same way we get sucked into watching Netflix. And I think that's a really interesting thing, because I know that a lot of L&D departments and businesses in general are struggling with that learner engagement piece. Like, how do we get people involved? And so if you bring in a dose of Hollywood and marketing stuff together, that could be the answer to, your problems. So
I love that mix.
Yeah.
I love that mix. Yeah, that's cool.
So, okay, so let's talk a little about that, because the interactive story world, back in when you created Broken Coworker, it was pretty groundbreaking in many ways. And like, I think that the L&D world had not heard of it. And even entertainment, there wasn't a lot of interactivity in the entertainment space. Now we're seeing things like Bandersnatch and these things in the entertainment world that are using interactivity. And also it's becoming a trend in business as well, to have interactivity and digital storytelling. I hear that phrase thrown around a lot in the more progressive, big corporations that really understand the value of that type of engagement. So where do you think it's going to go? I guess that's what I'm saying. It's like, if this is the beginning, if we're at the beginning of, or maybe the trend is already starting to pick up, and learning and development is beginning to get into this space, and businesses are beginning to demand this kind of skill. What do you think is going to happen in the future? Like, where is this going?
Let me look into my awesome crystal ball, which I want to influence.
Sure.
So I think, the tools have finally caught up. Like when you mentioned Bandersnatch, right? Like I read about the case study there, and they were like, it took us like 3 years and $3 million to just create the technology to be able to do that. And I was like, don't tell them about Articulate Storyline, because they would have been able to do that. But anyways, obviously there's other integrations. I'm not oversimplifying it, but what's cool is that the entertainment industry realizes that this is kind of the next level. And there are even shows where you get to choose your own path. Amazing, right? But I mean, if you think about what I'm thinking, is that for some terrible reason, instructional design has become this kind of like the science of instruction, but they've forgotten that storytelling is the first way that we learned everything. And for some reason, we've put that to the side and then forgotten to become storytellers again. So what we're doing now is we're seeing all these industries that have used storytelling for persuasion, for selling products, for getting people to take action, all the things that we want to do in L&D, motivate people to take action, persuade them to take on new mindsets and do new things. And we're like, hey, wait a minute, maybe we should do this. Maybe we should borrow this strategy. Maybe we should take back this strategy because it is our own. So what I'm thinking is, I think more of us are going to realize that this isn't something that is Hollywood. Hollywood took it away from learning, and we're just taking it back. But what is amazing there is that they've evolved that strategy, like with script writing, with bringing in natural language, with bringing in protagonists and intentions and transformations, all those things that are story-based. They've shown us what we can do, and now we can just take it back in its more refined form cool media form and actually integrate it into our learning experiences. Because as we see, people, like, for anybody who's like, my audience is too serious for storytelling, I'm like, they go home and binge watch Game of Thrones. Yeah. Like, you know, we know this. Everybody loves stories. We think in narrative, we understand in narrative. And so all we've been doing is robbing ourselves of this way to scaffold information in a way that's natural for our brains, and we do it already. We already do it. So if all we're doing is taking the best of the best, we have an amazing technology now that allows us to become amazing creators and producers. And now it's just going to ramp up, because I think people are going to become less intimidated, and they're going to realize that this is something they've really, is like, it's their inheritance. They just need to pick it up and run with it, because it shouldn't be foreign to us. It should be something that we should be striving to become more of, because the greatest storytellers are actually the best teachers. And now we're just using a different medium to do it. So that's where I think it's just going to take off once people put on the storytelling hat and say, I am a storyteller, because storytelling is natural to teaching and sharing information. So,
yeah. So you used to do development in this field, in the interactive storytelling, and now you've grown. I mean, you've had so many years of experience that now you're beginning to teach other people how to do this. So can you talk to us a little about your masterclass and also the coaching program that you have for interactive storytelling?
Yeah. So what's cool is when I started that, like, I think there's a point in your life where, like, you reach a peak, and it's the personal peak comes from you working on your own projects and seeing your own projects and maybe other peers' projects, and then you hit a kind of a plateau. And I realized that when I started coaching, I came in with like a little bit of this, like, hey, I've done some projects. Let me show you how it's done. But to be honest with you, now that I've been running the coaching program for like 2 years now, one of the things that's happened is I realized how much more I get to learn from other people. It's been because everybody comes in with, like, it's really cool. When you work on your own projects, you're kind of in your own little bubble, and you get to kind of iterate from within. You get to innovate from within. And then all of a sudden, when you have 80 other people come in with their own context, their own questions, their own dilemmas, that shifts a lot of things. So what's really cool is I was a purist on a lot of things. I was like, no, it's got to be done that way. And then somebody comes in with a project and they're like, I did this. And I was like, wait a minute, that works. That's pretty cool. I was wrong. So I'm like wrong every day now. But that for me is like, kind of like a selfish thing. It's every time somebody does a new project, I get to be a part of it and I get to learn that. And that's a part of the coaching and a part of the community, is that you get to be like, even if you never work on a project for a humanitarian organization or a retailer, that now becomes a part of like your repertoire, because you've seen those projects from beginning to end. And we record all our coaching sessions, so you can go back and see how somebody's project has evolved and changed from like their initial idea to then they saw somebody else's project and they're like, oh, I want to integrate that. So that's really cool for me. That's just the growth. So yes, so I run a coaching program to help other people craft their own interactive experiences, but really it's a selfish endeavor, so that I can learn more about this craft, which I love, become a better storyteller, but also so everybody in the community, as we grow, and as you know this, with each project, you test out new things, you become better at some things. And then you also, like which is so fantastic, you find a place where it's like really your thing, really your niche, and that you enjoy. And then you can just become master at that. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah. And I mean, I just, for those of you who don't know, I mean, I've participated in Anna's coaching program, and it pretty much changed my life. I mean, it changed the way that I approach, because I did traditional e-learning development for years as well. And, this was it felt like when I finally realized how different this was, this art of crafting stories, and really getting that engagement that we're all hoping to get. I mean, that's the reason that we go into L&D in the first place, is because we want people to love to learn. And it was like, I just remember like one day, like the light bulb going on, oh my gosh, I finally figured out this is how you can do it. And it can actually be super effective. So, I'm like, I'm really glad that I just sort of stumbled across you on LinkedIn. That worked out really great for me. So, I mean, I can't speak highly enough of everything I've learned from you and from Ryan, because it's been pretty awesome. We've covered a lot of stuff already, but I feel like there's like probably something I've missed.
Oh boy.
Is there, what else, what should I have asked? Or what other things do you want to add to this conversation that you think would be helpful to the people who are listening today?
That's a great question, man. That's a difficult question.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think there's two things maybe. One is that if you want to get started with even an interactive story, whatever it is, one of the things, and actually this cuts across all life, find out what's already working for somebody else and model it. And I'm not saying copy, I'm not saying steal, I'm saying, like, this has been my journey. I tried to invent things from scratch. I looked at the blank page and I thought, oh, how can I be creative here and wow my clients? When I realized that the best pieces are when you find something that's working, you can say, I really like how that's working. Let's say you like Broken Coworker or Connect with Haji Kamal or Workplace Warzone or a Breakthrough Board, whatever it is. You look at that model and you say, that's working and I like that interaction. How can I use this for my context? That is the place you start. And then you add the creativity within that context. It works. Because reinventing the wheel is ugly as heck. And that's why most projects are so terrible, because people are like, I'm going to be creative. I'm like, okay, what's the heuristics you're using here? None. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's look at some good stuff. And then, what was my other one? I think it's constraints. Constraints is the other one.
That's interesting.
So you've got modeling. That's cool. But what about, whether it's projects, and like one of the things that I found is kind of cool, and I learned this from Ryan because he's in that geek developer world. He'd say, we have that pair programming, and we do it for 48 hours. So he'd be like, how the nerds get together, they sit beside each other, and then they're like, let's knock out an app or something in a weekend. And first I thought that was ridiculous, but I've actually done it on a couple of projects, and I find that the constraints of that, telling yourself, I'm going to work on this one thing for this entire day, that creates like some crazy momentum, and it actually zones in your mind on a project that allows you to be more creative rather than working on 15 projects every day and just getting just a little bit in each one. So I find that focus and that constraint of saying, I'm just going to, like, today, I'm just going to work on the questions. And today I'm going to work on the visuals. Like, giving yourself that constraint can give you the momentum that, like, the really, really powerfully creative people who put out a lot of stuff, that's what they do. They say, they tell themselves, and I know you do this, Kimberly, because we've worked on projects, right? And you're like, I spent the weekend and 3 pots of coffee. And then we were like, serious. We were like, look at this momentum. Like, you killed it, right? Because of that. And most people just go, meetings, blah, 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 right?
Yeah, it's the difference between having a diffuse, like, bunch of sunlight coming in versus having a magnifying glass and lasering it in on one point, right? You could start a fire if you've got that focus. Exactly. So that productivity. I mean, that's actually one of the things that I really appreciated too about the coaching program. Is it's not just, kind of like, here's a skill set, here's some technical know-how. It's kind of like also like all of the life learning that you and Ryan have had in professional, like just how to be really good at, productivity or whatever it is. All of those things come along with it. So that's a huge benefit. Cool. So, okay. So Anna, tell us, like, if people want to learn more about you or your work, how do they get in touch with you and how do they find out more?
Thank you for asking. Scenariosecrets.com. That's it. Yeah, visit. I actually have there, I have free training that you can learn more about interactive storytelling, figure out if it's actually for you. But that's the best way to learn more about this craft, because I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you're interested in interactive stories, you're interested in learning how to either put them together or leverage them for your organization. And this is a great place to be. And the second best place to be is at scenariosecrets.com.
Yeah. So I will include a link in the show notes below on that as well. And let you folks who are watching this, if you want to follow up with Anna, definitely check that out.
Totally. And you know what I love? I'm just so excited you've really like embraced this and just like just ran with it. And it's awesome to see. It's awesome to see.
It made professionally, it was probably one of the biggest decisions and the best decision I made, for my own career. So anyways, thank you for that.
If you got value from this video, it would mean the world to me if you'd hit the like button. To learn more about interactive videos and how they're created, subscribe to this channel and watch this next video.